Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick unboxing and first look at the Linksys WRT1900AC. This is a dual-band gigabit Wi-Fi router announced back at CES 2014 by Belkin, of course Linksys, and priced at $279 and finally shipping here in the month of April. And there was a lot of excitement both then and now for this router because it's a throwback to one of the most popular routers ever made, the WRT54G. And I'll be talking about why that's so important a little bit later, but for those of you familiar with that router, or those of you that owned it like myself, you can already see the resemblance despite the fact that this is a completely different generation of home networking piece of equipment. So let's talk about specifications. You already know the suggested retail is $279 and that it's starting to ship now. But let's talk about actual speeds and what it can do. So right here, I'm going to go ahead and give you a tighter shot of the front of the package here. You can see the speeds in terms of N and AC connectivity because this is a dual band router that works both on 2.4 as well as 5 gigahertz ranges. You're going to peak at 600 megabits per second with a traditional N over 2.4 gigahertz, and with AC you're going to be looking at a peak of 1300 megabits, and that will be, of course, over 5 gigahertz. Ultimate range, because this actually can also act as an extender and a bridge, something that back at CES had not been announced. That is one of the changes that is noteworthy. Of course, dual band connectivity, as I mentioned before. We've got beamforming technology, both implicit and explicit. That's a good thing, even if you don't know what I'm talking about. Not important, really. But it's still something that clearly Linksys wanted to point out. You've got a USB 3.0 port. You also have 4 gigabit ports for wired connectivity, advanced security. You also have a dual-core 1.2 gigahertz processor powering the entire router experience, which is critical. And Linksys has been talking a lot about how powerful this processor is, the most powerful chip they've ever put in a router, and that's definitely a good thing considering so much performance is expected of this latest offering. In terms of performance antennas, that's another thing they point out because this router has 4. That's more than any other on the market. They can be detached, positioned in order to get peak performance out of this device. You also have open source ready labeled here, and that's because, like the WRT54G, this can work with OpenWRT software, and that's yet another tremendous advantage. In fact, the calling card of this router in many ways. And last but not least, you do have an eSATA port that also doubles as a USB 2.0 port. By the way, the eSATA and USB 3.0 are both capable of 80 megabytes per second at peak. Now keep in mind, all of these speeds I've been telling you about, they are peak speeds. That's under perfect or ideal conditions. So what you're going to actually experience will be a little bit different. I'm going to go ahead and flip over the box. Of course, compatible with PC as well as Mac, and also functional with Android and iOS devices if you install the optional application. And you can set up the router. You can do pretty much everything from this Linksys app that they've designed to work in tandem with this router. And you can see right here on the box, Linksys is pointing out the high performance antennas because not only is speed a major thing these days, but clearly the range of your router is as well. So basically just talking about the dual band performance and how it optimizes to work specifically with the devices it should. And then they've got a chart essentially going through all of the features that the WRT1900AC has in blue right here along the side of the box, and I've pretty much covered all of it. Again, the most noteworthy for many of you will be the fact that this is capable to deal or developed in cooperation with, for use with OpenWRT, like the old 54G. So with that said, and of course I mentioned the smart Wi-Fi network map and the ability to control all of your home networking through an app remotely, you will have to actually create an account with Linksys to do that. Let's get this out of the box, because that pretty much sums up everything you need to know about this router. So there we have it. It is large, no question about it, and that's because it does have to do quite a bit of ventilation, or it needs ventilation, in order to deal with everything that I mentioned before. Some things I left out. We have 128 megs of RAM on here, or excuse me, flash storage, 256 megabytes of RAM, DDR3 RAM. So you have flash storage as well as operating memory as well. And that's because really at the core, this does have an ARM processor, that dual core chip. And this is the first time we're seeing routers really approach the competency, or the need to have the competency, of far more complex devices like our smartphones and tablets. So we've got LED notifications up front. You can see as I bring it in close, try to get that in focus. It'll let you know whether the device is powered on, whether or not you've got a connection to the internet, whether or not or which band you're on, which are active, whether the eSATA, USB 1 or 2 ports are being used. Remember, even though the eSATA and USB 2.0 are one and the same, it's still going to tell you which you're using. On the bottom, we've got quite a bit of ventilation, even more. Some rubber feet here. Antenna essentially mounts all along the back and side. You can see all 4 of them there. And here on the back end, we've got the Gigabit ports that I mentioned before, all 4 of them right here. Your quick sync button in order to quickly essentially network this with another device if you want to hit that instead of actually entering in a password that you set up with the encryption. And then of course your direct port here for the internet coming from your modem of whatever connection you're using, and then a USB 3.0 port that I mentioned before that is labeled, by the way, as the USB 2 port right there, you may have noticed. And then we've also got the eSATA that doubles as the USB 2.0, a reset button, our power port, and power switch. And all of this is flanked, of course, again, by 2 more antenna connections. So that pretty much rounds out the build. And again, it is heavy, it is large, but that's because we're getting best-in-class performance. And this is the top of the line when it comes to Linksys home networking. So let's see what else is in the box here. We've got our quick start guide, and essentially just tells you exactly how to connect the device. Plug it in, essentially connecting all of the antennas, as well as connecting it to your modem. And also showing you that you should not be blocking any of the ventilation. Clearly that can cause overheating and eventual damage to the router. But other than that, it's pretty much it here in the paperwork. You can see we've got all 4 of the antennas waiting right there. And you don't have to use all 4, but right now the other top of the line model on the market, the Nighthawk, only has 3 antennas. So this is definitely a bragging right for Linksys. Also the fact, beyond the 4 antenna array that you get here, you also have that Open WRT support. So those are really critical elements when you're comparing it to the current top of the line router that this is going to compete with. And beneath the styrofoam padding there, we have our included Ethernet cable, which, if that didn't come with a router, what would? We have nothing there, but we have right here one of the pieces of the power connector. This is going to plug into the power brick, and this is very similar, again, to something like a laptop or tablet in terms of, now you do have a power brick, but most routers, of course, have to have some sort of power brick to carry the voltage that they need. And that is pretty much it. Nothing else in here. So you've got your power connection right there, included Ethernet, of course, the 4 antennas, and then what we all really care about, the WRT1900AC. So I'll be reporting back on performance, but I'm expecting really good things from this router. Again, this is the throwback to the comeback, I should say, for Linksys when it comes to the good old WRT54G, which there's no question it really was one of, if not the most popular router ever made. So excited to be sharing this with all of you. Hope you enjoyed the unboxing. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.